You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron Mack. The other co-host, you may have seen walking out with great clips with a big old smile on his face. You've probably seen him at a dirt track. He is the one and only Scott Bowie.
Hello, Aaron.
Hello, you're smiling this time. I know we got a couple comments about the last intro, but you look like I don't know the word to use, but you just didn't look very happy. So it's good. It's good to see a smile on your face.
I can do that sometimes. I can have that look on my face every once in a while. I don't mean anything by it. Please don't be offended. But every once in a while, I can look aggravated.
Hey, as long as it's not towards me.
No. This is the least of my problems right here. What we do.
Well, want to thank everyone on that note. Want to thank everyone for watching and listening. If you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere podcasts can be found. Also, want to give a shout out to racercollect.com. Patrick Patton, we've had him on the show several times. Great guy. He actually helped us line up one of our guests we will be releasing sometime in the near future. So special thank you to him for that. And if you're looking for any kind of special racing memorabilia, really anything, definitely check out racercollect.com. I see that they add stuff, new stuff daily. So definitely check them out.
Yeah, he's a great dude. And again, this stuff, a lot of it comes from the actual racers themselves. It's not something that you're buying with like a certificate of authenticity or anything like that. In terms of you're just taking someone's word on it. This is some, this many of the items come directly from the people who are selling it. So I've said it before, it's needed, and he's a hard worker, and I think he has something really good there.
Yeah, for sure. And so our guest today, we actually recorded this back in December. I think this was before Christmas, and we have a couple others we need to release here soon. But Tom Bigelow, one of the all-time USAC greats for sure.
Yeah, Tom, up until in the last 5 years when Dave Darlin finally surpassed him, he is the second, but for a very long time was the all-time winningest sprint car driver in USAC history. He started 500s. He's ran sprint cars, midgets, Silver Crown, stock cars. He's kind of done it all. And he is a long time friend. He is my very first and still racing heroes. I am so glad I know Tom, and man, I could go on for days about Tom Bigelow, about what a great guy is. But I just want to, the simplest way I could put it is someone I really respect. And I've told this story on here before. We talk about it in the interview. My very first sprint car race gets rained out. He's driving a car my dad is working on. And while they're getting the car loaded, he goes up and helps my mom carry me out of the stands. I'm about probably 6 weeks old at the time. And that's how long I've known Tom Bigelow. And like I said, I still see him at the races. Tommy races, his son races. Tommy's grandson. So I still get to see Tom and his family around, and it's just it's something that always puts a smile on my face, and I'm so glad to say he's my friend.
And he picked on you a little bit there in the beginning. It was kind of funny.
Sure, absolutely. I deserve it. I deserve all of it because I've picked on a lot of people over the years. So, I will never get tired of Tom Bigelow picking on me. So, I can't say enough about the guy. I really can't.
Yeah, no, definitely great guy. Someone that we wanted to have on for a long time. Whenever I think Tom Bigelow, I think about a mouse because we actually talk about this when he signs his name, he draws a mouse. And it's just a really cool thing, cool way for people to kind of remember him.
Yeah, and he's one of the great ambassadors racing has ever had. All forms of racing has ever had. He is the guy who, if you need someone, no matter how much success he had, and this is the guy that's won several USAC championships, several USAC races. Um, you know, he could turn stuff down, but he was one of the very first people every time to, want to go meet the fans and want to go promote the sport, and that's how I've always known him to be.
Yep, and his cat Frank actually makes a small appearance
That's
about
right.
the middle of the interview.
Yeah, in like I said, it was Christmas time, and it was just so kind of him to take time out to speak with us, and uh, man, he's such a friendly guy, and he never met a stranger, and I talked about, I think, in the interview is even I went to the Janet Guthrie film premiere here in Indianapolis at the art museum, and the two guys that were there were talking. Um, one was um, Johnny Rutherford, and the other one's Tom Bigelow. And Tom was pretty much like a teammate to her, with Rollo Volstad and all that. So through Rollo Volstad, and so he's still to this day always one of the first people to line up to promote the sport.
Yeah, for sure. So, what racing news we got this week, Scott?
Uh USAC midgets were in Florida. Justin Grant won both ends of that, both nights. He looks very dominant right now. Uh, Jade Advidajian ran third. She led that race for a very long time. Nearly became the first woman to win USAC National Midget Show. And then, man, there's tons of racing going on in Florida. Tonight is the very first night. This is Monday the 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there. And tonight is the very first night of the World of Outlaws Extreme Sprint Car Non-Wing Series. And they're running the feature, I think, right now. And USAC, and one of the reasons why we're releasing this week is USAC sprints start toward the end of this week. And we decided it'd be a good time to drop this Tom Bigelow interview, since he is one of the all-time great USAC racers. Yeah. And sad news, very sad news. One of the great characters of auto racing, midget racing in particular, Kevin Olson, died the other night in a what must have been a terrible traffic accident. Reports have it a drunk driver, young person, hit him and killed him and injured his, I assume his girlfriend, longtime companion, I guess. And that's very sad, because Kevin Olson brought a lot of humor and a lot of light to a lot of people's lives. And anybody out there, if you don't know who Kevin is, he has a book out called Cages Are for Monkeys. He very much saw himself as an old time racer, but he was still winning midget races up until 2 years ago, and nearly won a race last year at Sun Prairie. So this guy was 68, 69, going into 70s, still winning races against people a third his age. Nearly a third of his, I guess not a third of his age, but nearly a third of his age. And I mean, what can you say? I mean, the guy, he loved to bring laughter in that, but once he strapped in a race car, he was all business. And he too is one of the all-time great USAC greats in the USAC midgets, and it's a sad loss for a lot of people. To say I knew Kevin as a friend would be a lie, but he was friends to a lot of people, and I don't think he ever met a stranger. And my best goes out to his family, and it's a loss. It's a loss for all motorsports. He was a lot of people don't know this. He would work for a year or 2 years for the IMS radio team. I think he was a pit reporter.
I didn't know that.
So during the RL days, yeah. And he kind of just did a lot of things in his life. He said his main job was light bulb repairman, which obviously would not be true, but that's who Kevin was. And I guess the only term that applies is Godspeed, Kevin Olson.
Well, I think so. I would say we've recorded. Like we were saying, we have a bunch of interviews still from December. I think we got to release in the next month or so, and we've recorded some really good ones in the past couple of weeks as well. I know last week we recorded a former Indy 500 driver who's also driven just about every major form of American motorsports and international motorsports.
Yeah.
So definitely look forward to release that one. I know we're going to have a part 2 with him too, so I'm already looking forward to that. And yeah, we have some other ones. I know we have a couple scheduled this week, another guest returning, a new one, and then we have some others that we're definitely working on. So definitely, I think good things ahead.
I agree, and again, thanks to you for getting all the logistics of these scheduled. Different guests have different requirements. Some are just open for an open conversation. Others they want to have topics and want a very narrowed and direct conversation, which both are fine with me. And so Aaron has to work with that. So thanks again for that. And yeah, I'm excited. We got a lot going on. Then we got the start of the IndyCar season next week. So big things happening.
Absolutely. Definitely looking forward to this year. Well, I think without any further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into Tom Bigelow interview. Hope everyone enjoys. And like I said, make sure you stay tuned for the coming weeks as we have some other good interviews we'll be releasing shortly. So thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you hit like and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And everybody have a great week.
Our guest today is number 2 on the all-time USAC National Sprint Car wins list with 52 wins. He was a 1978 USAC National Sprint Car champion, 1984 USAC National Midget Car champion, and drove in 9 Indianapolis 500s. We were joined by Tom Bigelow. Hey, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Good, Aaron. It's a pleasure being with you guys.
Hey, Tom. Long time no see. Hope you're doing well.
Doing great. You're looking good. Must be eating a little well,
huh? I've always ate well.
Yeah.
I've always ate well.
Did you ever get to see
on the bigger side?
Yeah, Scott is built for comfort, not speed.
That's right.
Did you ever get to see Scott with the long hair, Tom? He had long hair for last year, and he just cut it not long ago.
Yeah. I got to know Scott when he was just a toddler, almost in his diapers yet, So I've watched him grow up, and I've seen him with long hair, short hair, skinny, well shaped, Now he's like all of us, getting a little bit on the plump side here, I guess, might say.
I love it.
Well, actually, my first, and I've told this story on here a couple of times, my very first USAC sprint car race, you were driving for Carl, and I was not even 6 weeks old, I don't think, and it started raining, and you went up and helped Mom get me out of the stands. And you've definitely known me almost the entirety of my life.
Well, that's true. I can remember when you were just a little guy, and what a cute little baby you were, I'll have to say.
Well, I think things have changed a little bit, but maybe I've retained a little bit of that cuteness.
Well, Scott, you've been a good young man through your whole life, It's always been a pleasure being around you, always. Your dad was a great guy, really did a lot helping me getting going in racing and sprint cars, the midgets, Champ Dirt, Indy cars. We've just had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's been a pleasure. I just, as a kid, I remember you driving the car for Carl, and You're my first racing hero. You're still a hero of mine, and it's going to be a real pleasure to get to talk to you.
Well, I tell you, it's a pleasure being on your show. You guys do a great job here, and all of us racers appreciate that.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
So, talk a little bit, Tom, about what's your earliest memories of racing, and how did you first get interested in it?
I had a brother-in-law that was a mechanic and worked on some Indy cars, many years ago in Chicago, and he loved racing. And we lived on a farm in Wisconsin, and he asked me one day, he said, "Do you ever think about driving race cars?" Of course, I was only 10 years old, and I said, "Ooh, I'd love to do that." So we lived on a farm with a horseshoe driveway. He built a little go-kart, as they call them today, and I used to race around there. Well, one day I went racing out towards the road, and the neighbor was coming along, the neighbor lady, and she slammed on the brakes and come to a screeching stop because I used to slide right out by the road. And my dad and my brother-in-law were in the driveway, and they come running out, asked her what the problem was, and she said, "I thought he was going to drive right out in the road. He almost gave me a heart attack." So my dad told my brother-in-law, Paul, said, "Better get the grader and go make a racetrack out behind the barn." We did that, had a little, like a 5th-mile racetrack, banked. We had that go-kart. Then we had a couple motorcycles, had a 49 Chevy that was hitting the back. We shortened it up, a real short wheelbase, used to race that around. And that's how I got my start. From there, I got into stock cars at Jefferson, Wisconsin. I set a record there the first year we run. That's not one I'm proud of, but whenever I get up there, they bring it up to me. And that was in the 14 competitive races I run that year. I flipped that car 16 different times. Wow. That's when I learned there was more to being a race driver than just sitting in the seat and standing on the gas. From there, I got into the midgets up at Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Then I had a cousin that promoted sprint car racing in Illinois and in the Midwest. He got me a sprint car ride, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. Got into IMCA, was Rookie of the Year with Billy Peterball. We got going pretty good. I'll have to give that old timer, and he's not with us anymore, but we were out racing once, and I come in. He said, "What should we do?" And I told him. He done it. Went out, and boy, that was the worst handling car. I spun out. I come in, and I said, "Merle, that didn't work at all, Merle Heath." And he said, "Well, I knew it wasn't gonna, but you'll never forget that." He said, "These are the changes we need to make." After that, I talked about what we should do with the owners. And that's what I've done with your dad, Scott. We used to talk about it, make changes, and luckily we were pretty successful. From there, it seemed like I got into Indy cars with Raul Volstead, and then got hooked up with A.J. Watson and Wilkie, and then Armstrong Mold, and the Genesee beer, and I was always lucky to have good owners. Maybe they didn't have a lot of money, but they had enough money to keep everything running good. And it was the same with the sprint cars. Junior Knepper, a great car owner. Of course, Armstrong Mold, I can't forget him, and Genesee Beer. We always had a lot of fun after the races as well, but we went out to run well. We wanted to win. I never said I was going to go out and win them all. I just wanted to go out and have a good time, run my best. And winning was just great. I love to win. So
yeah, it's funny you were talking about crashing that car so much. You must have learned well, because when my most distinctive memories of watching you race, and it was anywhere we went to, is just how smooth you were. And that, I always kind of felt like that was maybe the secret sauce to your success, was once you got into traffic, especially if you're leading, man, there was nobody that was going to outrun you in traffic. And I mean,
Well,
would you say that was, you learned those hard lessons earlier and you're like, hey man, I got to figure this out.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's very true. And that's one thing I learned when I was young. Because also, when I got into midgets, the first 3 times out, I flipped. It just seemed like, crashing was something. My mom said after the second one, maybe you better be a golfer or just a farmer or something because you aren't doing this very well. Well, yeah, I sat down and talked to myself and said, I better learn how to drive these cars and learn the handling of them and then learn to be smooth. And I think from then on, I just kind of took it easy, slowed down a little bit. And that's something that's hard to do. You slow down to be a fast race driver, but that has really helped me. And I know a lot of people say watching you being so smooth when you're out there with other competitors is what made you look good.
Yeah, it was impressive. I just remember, and it didn't matter really where you were, whether it's a speedrome or if you're at Terre Haute or if you're at Winchester. Everybody has their styles, right? You got Vogler, who just wide open all the time. He finally learned how to slow down a little bit. The older he got, but then you had like Tripp and I don't know, Sheldon Kinzer. Everybody kind of had their own styles, and I just remember yours was always that one where we're just so smooth.
Well, yeah, all those guys you mentioned were good friends and great competitors, and we all got along good outside the track. But when we got inside the track, it was each man for himself. Vogler's dad, Richie Vogler, Don Vogler, really helped me a lot when I was getting started in midgets, and we won a lot of races with him. It's really great to have been able to run with car owners like that help you. Don Vogler would take it out and warm it up. If it wasn't running right or handling, he wouldn't let me get in it. And that
Really?
just always made me look good. But
Yeah,
also,
Don always thought kind of got the reputation of kind of being a hard guy, but then you hear some stories like that, and I don't know if he really was as hard as he let people to think he was.
no, he wasn't hard at all. He'd help anybody. I've seen guys have trouble, and we weren't running that great, but he'd go help them get their car going and then come back and say, I'm sorry, but I just got to help them guys. We can't beat them if they aren't out on the racetrack. He was just a super good guy.
Oh, that's great to hear. It's good to hear that type of story about him.
Yeah. Well, and Richie was too. We were great friends. Of course, it's like you. I got to know Richie when he was just like 10 years old, coming up, and watched him through his career and helped him a little bit. But he never was one to ask him very much. He kind of learned from himself and his dad, but his dad wasn't afraid to tell him what to do.
Right. Yeah, I always felt like Rich was what is he was just, I think I think for a fan, Rich was really exciting, and I think for a lot of competitors, you had to know how to race Rich, I think.
Yeah. Richie and I had our times on the racetrack. I remember
Right.
one year my wife saying, it's amazing. Every time you and Richie get close together, you're banging wheels and slapping each other, but it seems like you both drive away. Now, Richie was a fierce competitor, and I think he had an outstanding career coming, but things just happen, and that's what happened with
Yeah.
Richie.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so at what point did you really, because it was a different time. I mean, you could really make a living as a driver. I mean, there was enough races and enough car owners and that. At what point did you say to yourself, man, I think I can do this. I think that I can make some money at this.
Well, I was driving semi, and there again, I had good bosses back in the day that would let me take off and go racing. In fact, when I really got where I was running really good, I was driving semi for major transport up in Wisconsin, and it worked out great there because that was a college town, Whitewater. There was a college kid come over one day and said, "Eddie, I'd like to get a job, but I can only work maybe weekdays and not weekends." And I said, "Well, that's great because I'm home weekends and I mean gone." He said, "I can work weekends." I'm sorry, I had that backwards. "I can't work weekdays." I said, "That's great. I'll work the weekdays, you work weekends." And we done that for, I think, like 2 years. Well, it was really nice of Eddie to let me just work weekends. And then when school started, of course, he had to go to school and racing was pretty well done. So then I had a job all winter. And for 2 summers, well, that worked out great because driving semi back then was pretty good money. The money I
Sure.
made racing sure helped also. But
Right.
So at that point, did you have like a racing goal at that point when you were, when you started racing? Like, was it to drive the Indy 500, or did you not really think about any end goals?
yeah, I had the dream when I was 12 years old. I told my mother, listening to the 500 one day, "I'm going to drive in that race." And of course, moms, "Oh, yeah, sure, someday
Right.
maybe you will." And I always had goals, but I never set them so high I couldn't achieve them. I'd set a goal, achieve it, and then kind of step it up the ladder. But Indianapolis was my goal, and when I finally made it, that was the greatest thrill of my racing career. And that was, in 1972, had a couple of good midget owners, and we won every race on a half mile or larger that year. And that's what caught Rollo Volsted's eye is he said, "You're winning on those big tracks, so you must like speed." And so we got together, and that was my start to Indianapolis.
Yeah, I thought, as a side note, when I went to that Janet Guthrie thing, that when they did that premiere or whatever you want to call it at that art museum, I didn't even know you were going to be there, and I thought that was great that you were there, still representing the sport and still representing the Volstads, because of his involvement with Janet Guthrie, and I just thought that was really really cool, and that's that's one thing I've always thought about with you is you've always been a person who you've always been a person who pushes the sport. You've always been a champion of auto racing, whether you were a driver or not, and I just always thought that was cool.
Well, I believe that, the race fans supported us and a lot of younger fans, such as you, and still going to functions today means a lot to me because you get to see a lot of these younger race fans and the elder ones come up, and say, "I remember this" or "I remember that." And it was just such a neat time growing up in the era that I did. We could have a good time with our race fans and owners and sponsors after the race. Today, it's such a big business and so much money involved. I feel sorry for young drivers. It's like going to Raceway Park. They just had a breakfast of champions honoring some of the past champions that we never got a trophy for, but it's an AJ Foyt champion trophy and our name is on it, which will be on display out at the Locust Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park. I like that
That's
new
right.
name, And I
Yep.
thought that was really nice of the racetrack to honor us older guys that have won races there and really love that place.
Yeah, and I can't believe Aaron's not jumping in because you mentioned the younger fans, and one of the things he always talks about is your autograph and
Yeah.
with the
So
mouse.
So I've got your autograph before. Obviously, you draw a mouse. How did that come about?
I had a brother-in-law that said, if you want people to remember you, you got to do something to kind of get recognized. So he drew this fancy looking mouse, and I went to Sun Prairie, and after the races, this couple come down, and this young boy, I signed the autograph, took the time, put that mouse on there, and next week he come back and he said, "Hey, Dad, that's the guy that draws the mouse." I've never signed an autograph without a mouse on it since then. Even signing a check, sometimes I put the mouse on there anyway. and it's
That's
nice.
funny.
I've got cards. We get Christmas cards from people that say, I remember back when you come and visited the hospital somewhere and give my kid a coloring book, and they always remember that little mouse. And that's how it got started.
Well, that's great. I never knew that's how that got started. I just always remember that's what the autograph was, but I didn't know that side of it.
Yeah. The poor little mouse has changed a bunch over the years. It used to be a little fancier,
Right.
but as you get to where you're signing autographs and you look out and there's 40, 50 people standing there, you got to find a way to kind of speed it up. So that's how the mouse got the design it is today.
That's kind of being ahead of your time as far as like marketing goes, finding a way to kind of stick out. I mean, it's pretty unique.
Yeah, I'm glad he suggested that because, it caught on in Sun Prairie pretty quick of people coming up and saying, "Oh yeah, here you draw that mouse. That's really nice."
Funny.
Well, and you look at Richard Petty's autograph; it's such a fancy autograph, and that's what so many people talk about with him too. Is that autograph, and it's just funny the things that stick with people.
Like Rick Mears always writes thanks. Rick Mears thanks.
Yeah, I've got an autograph up here with that.
Howdy Holmes does a smiley face. There's several drivers who have little like trademarks like that with their autographs.
Yeah. Well, Bigelow the mouse, that was a cartoon for a long time, and people have come up and asked me, "Is that how you got the idea?" Well, I had the idea for the mouse years before Bigelow the mouse ever come along as a cartoon.
I didn't even know that was an actual cartoon.
I didn't know that either.
Oh yeah, well, Bigelow name's pretty popular. Bigelow Tea, there's Bigelow Advertising, Bigelow Racers. Now, I'm pleased with the name, and I'm pleased with everything I've done in auto racing.
You were talking about the 500, and I know you kind of went there a couple of times before you actually made the race, and but you were talking about when you finally first made that first 500. What was that like? Were you so in the midst of your career? Did it mean a lot, or was it like the culmination of your life's goals?
Well, I think it was just the dream come true, something that I'd always looked forward to because, first couple times I were there, we didn't make it. Once was with Ray Smith, the other time with Carl Gilhausen, and we just didn't have the money and the cars to do it then. But making that race is, I think, the goal of every race driver. I feel sorry for the younger guys that have come along, here in the past 5 years or so that just they have the talent, but they don't have the money. And just as I was getting out of Indy cars, that's when it got to where money had to be part of the deal. And the same with today. These young kids come along, and if they don't have a good sponsor behind them that has the money, a lot of good talent is going down the drain.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation with a gentleman last night along the same lines. Yeah, it's just especially the time when you started running the 500, it was still the month of May. It was still that grind. Did you you made the 500 9 times in a row? Is that right?
Yeah.
So once you made it, you kept making it.
Yeah.
And then your best finish was what, 4th?
6th. Six,
Sorry.
1976.
77. 6 was in 77, right?
77, yeah. I guess that was 77 with leader card. A.J. Watson Wilkie as the owner. Have my wife.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the finish it, to run the top 10. I mean, and of course, I know how Watson is. Was that a pretty good little celebration afterwards? Of course, they won it a bunch over the years, but was that a pretty good little celebration?
Oh yeah, AJ was a great guy, and every time we won, whether it was or run good in the Indy cars, and when we won in the Champ Dirt cars, we always had a little party afterwards. And you know, AJ was a great mechanic, a good guy to work with, and Ralph Wilkie, the leader card, and of course Wilkie racers are still running today in midgets. You know, that was such an outstanding group. Bob Wilkie with leader card, I think they won the Speedway 2 or 3 times with Watson, Wilkie, and Watson. You know, the 3 W's. Why that was a good team, and just an outstanding bunch to work with.
Yeah, the little bit of time I got to spend around AJ, he was quite the character, and I mean that in the best way possible.
Oh yeah, he was outstanding. You know, he'd never drink till 5 o'clock. Then he'd say, "Well, must be 5 o'clock somewhere, so let's all go have one and enjoy the evening."
Yeah, for the people who don't know, and actually where Top Gun Racing is today with Billy Throckmorton, that's obviously where Grant King shops were, and Grant King shops were right next to Watson's for several years. And I remember when my dad worked at Grant King's, I'd be over there every once in a while, and at 5 o'clock, and Watson come poke his head in, and say, "Hey, it's 5 o'clock."
Yeah.
And everybody, he's wanting to find somebody to drink a beer with.
Yeah, well, that's the way he was. Just 5 o'clock. You know, he worked hard all day long.
Yes.
He'd get there at 8, work till 5, and if something had to be done later, he was back there doing it. But you know, he liked his beer at 5 o'clock.
Yes, he did.
So,
yeah, AJ. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was going to say, so 74 is your first 500. So on race morning for your first 500, I mean, we've talked to a lot of guys. So we talked to Alex Lloyd last night, who said like the night before his first 500, he couldn't sleep. I mean, was that kind of the same for you? Like, were you like super nervous about the 500, or did it just feel like any other race?
No, I was pretty nervous, but I had a good right-hand man in Lee Skinner. And when we got up, he said, "We're going to eat, and then we're going to avoid people." You know, he said, "I'm going to walk you in the garage. We're going to shut the door." And I said, "Why is that?" And then just happened to be a guy walked in, and a good race fan turned out to be a good friend. And, you know, he said, "Well, aren't you nervous?" "Boy, I'd sure be nervous. This was my first race. You know, I'd be all jittery and upset." And he just said, "I'm sorry, my friend, you'll have to leave." So that was one thing. He kept me calm after the first race. Why, then you're always thrilled just to make the next one, the next one, and the next one. And it gets to be not just another race, but, you know, that 500 was always a special event to make.
And how kind of, you know, crazy is really the start? I mean, you know, you're doing the parade laps and there's, you know, 400,000 people, whatever. I mean, like you say, you remember being 12 years old and, you know, listening to and telling your mom you're going to race in it someday. And at this point, you're racing it. Like, how surreal was that on the parade laps to kind of look around and be like, "Wow, I'm actually in the race right now"?
That was, excuse me, that was just fabulous, you know, coming down the front straightaway. Well, as you enter 3 over there, where all the fans starting and looking around. And then as you come down the main straightaway, Wilbur Shaw took me out when I first got there in 1970. And he said, "When you come down this front straightaway, like on qualifying day even, it just looks like a big tunnel. And you're starting out here where it's wide and then it just gets small. All the color in the stands. All week long when you're out practicing that, it's kind of empty. There's people up there all the time, but boy, qualifying day and race day, that color makes that front straightaway look really small. And then driving down into turn one, it's dirty, dusty, stones and debris flying around. Why, it's different. But a couple of drivers told me to just kind of tape a rag at the bottom of your helmet so that debris can't get up in your eyes. And then after you get going, you can just tear it loose and either let it fly or drop it down beside you.
Now, starting in the back of the pack, we've heard a lot of drivers say like they noticed a big deal with like the fumes and stuff from the cars in front of them. Was that a big thing that you noticed?
Oh yeah, you get the fumes because most of the exhaust, or a lot of times then the exhaust come out just about eye level of the car ahead of you, and the fumes would get in your eyes and get to watering. But you just have to learn to kind of drop away from somebody or try to get wide in the track to get where you got clean air and not let that bother you. But them fumes were something else also.
You alluded to earlier, and we were just talking about, and you, like you said, you've won a lot of races everywhere, but you've won a lot of races at the big joints, as people would call them. The Winchesters and the Salems and the Terre Hautes and the Springfields, DuQuoins, all that. What do you think? Why do you think you went so well at those places? Well, what do you think was about your driving style, I should say?
I guess I just loved all kinds of racetracks, no matter what the size, and especially loved events that were like 100 miles or these longer races, many laps, because I'd never try to charge to the front early. I'd always kind of lay back and look at the guy's tires in front of me, and you kind of get the feel of how fast everybody's going. And then once you kind of get settled in, you can start moving ahead. And as you watch their tires maybe going away, hey, in a couple laps, I'm going to pass him pretty easy because he's going to not handle well. So I think that's it, is watching the competitors and knowing the length of the race so that you can take care of yourself to keep yourself in good shape to run the end. I know a lot of owners said, golly, you were running as fast at the end of a race, long races, as you did right near the beginning. So pacing yourself is a big thing in long races.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, so and since you just brought that up, like as far as like fitness goes during a race, like obviously fitness has gone a long way in racing. I mean, now these guys eat and breathe and drink fitness 24/7. But back then, what was kind of your fitness regimen like? Like, what'd you do to stay in shape?
Well, one thing, I was born and raised on a farm, milking cows, baling hay. My dad had a milk route. I had a 200-can milk route every day. You're handling them 90-pound milk cans. So, you get in shape. Then you always try. Of course, once you're in good shape, and my brother was a farmer, and being a semi driver, you're always handling stuff. And I think kind of my work kept me in good shape. Then when I kind of quit working and just went racing, I always tried to lift weights or do something to keep my arms and keep my body in shape. Fitness is a great deal today. You've got to be mentally. And people say, oh, race drivers, they're not real athletes.
Oh, people say all the time, yep.
You sit in that car for 3.5, 4 hours, and you got to concentrate and keep your eyes aware of what's going on around you and be alert.
Yeah, all the while dealing with G-forces.
Yeah, G-force is a big deal. I got hurt in '69, and right after that, I had neck problems. So I used to wear a collar, and the doctor told me to get some kind of cushion under your seatbelt. And then I used to put a block on the right side from the cushion up to my helmet, and it just sat there. And then the strap on the left side of the helmet. And like the speed drone, we'd go out and run them 500 lappers, and after that one, Gary Bettenhausen, when we won, he come down in the winner's circle and he said, look at these kids are falling on the ground and you're standing up, your neck is straight. He said, boy, you're in good shape. But that's the thing you got to remember is, you have to watch yourself if you have a problem. And I still have that neck problem, but I always wore that block. And a lot of people didn't notice that with the uniform and the helmets and stuff, but that's what really helped me. Even in the Indy cars, I wore that block to keep my head upright.
So you won all the sprint car races and obviously it had become I'm not quite sure the year that you took over the lead, but the all-time winning sprint car driver, and at some point you decide, hey, I'm going to hook up with Carl Sandy, and we're going to go race midgets. And as you just alluded to, you won the 500 lapper. And what kind of brought you back to, run the midget deal full time?
Well, I met Carl at the Speedway. As a matter of fact, he come up and said, would you like to run my midget out at the Speedrome? But he said, I'll tell you this, if you go out and win, I'm going to fire you. Because that was the time they had did it by points.
Right.
So you'd run your heat and then you'd line up near the front. Of course, easy to go out and win. After that first win, he says, well, we partied a little bit afterwards and kind of got to know him pretty well. And he come by the Speedway a couple of days later and he said, do you want to go try it again? And I said, oh, sure, I'd love to. So we went back out to the Speedrome the next week and won again. Then you get points to start moving back. And he said, I just like your style and we like you, so we're going to keep running. And then when I kind of got done with Indy cars and sprints, of course, I run the midgets quite a bit when I did run the sprints also, but he said, I want to win a championship. I've been midget racing for years and I want to do it. So we went out and won the championship with Carl, and he was another great owner. He was an attorney. His wife is a professor at Purdue in Lafayette there. And, it's such a great couple, and you could go have fun with them. I'd traveled with them, go out east. It was just great to have an owner like that. And still, we were good friends right up till he passed away.
Yeah, and I was the same way. I met Carl. Yeah, I probably met him when I was a kid, but I remember meeting him at the same time because Dad was building the motors and all that, as you know. And just Carl always treated me as an equal. Like, didn't even matter how old I was. Like he never was like, hey kid, get away. He always would talk to me and I remember years later when one of the first midgets we had, and Carl had kind of not had midgets for a while, and he come into when we were keeping a car down there at Walter's shop, that Race Car Restorations. And he was looking at that midget. He goes, man, that is a really nice car. And I remember thinking to myself, that is pretty cool, because he used to have some of the nicest cars that I was around. And now he's talking about how nice our car was. And then it wasn't long after that, he bought a, midget and that. But, for years he would call me or come in the shop and buy parts and ask me who I thought, who this, what I think about this driver, that driver, who did I think was fast. And I just always enjoyed my relationship with Carl, and I now miss Carl to the day I'm gone. I just really enjoyed Carl.
He was a great guy, just a good friend and somebody that, and he's another one that would help people, if somebody was having a problem and come over and say, I need this or whatever. But your dad building the motors, I know there were several times that your dad would come to the races. Even we were having a little engine trouble, and boy, they just about overhauled that motor right there. And we were in between heat races or something. And that's what's so nice about your dad and Carl. There's so many good people in racing that will help you. back in our day anyway. I imagine it's still that way, but what a sport. Not a lot of sports are like that.
No, it's funny. Bill and I talk about from a lot of times, like one of the sad things about the sport today, especially it seems like in midget racing, but a lot of sprint car racing too, is what we call the sportsman owner is not there anymore. The guy had cars and hired drivers and the Carl Sandys of the world and the Sherman Armstrongs of the world, and Bob Wilkies of the world. We don't see a lot of that today, and I miss that.
Yeah, I do too. And going to the races now, a lot of times it's the dad owns the car and the kid drives it and he crashes it and the kid just gets out and walks away and dad just picks up the pieces and loads it up and go home. And the camaraderie, I guess, isn't there anymore. Like when I ever crashed the car, I stayed with it and got back to the trailer and helped load it up. And the drivers back then would do that. But boy, you watch them today, they just don't care. Now they get out. Some of them go to their big motor homes and jump in there and shut the door and don't even want to have anything to do with the race fan.
Right. And the first thing you see today is when those cars turn over, the steering wheel comes flying out of the cockpit. And some crew guys, track crew guys got to go run it down so you can put it back on the car so they can tow the car off.
Yeah. If my grandson and son are running midgets yet, we have two. And I told them, if you ever crash, you better get out and stay with the car and act your age. Don't be throwing the wheel and bouncing around or going off to hit somebody. You got to be a good competitor, and I don't want to see that. If I ever had a driver that would have done that, I'd fire him on the spot. I have no mercy for him.
Yeah, it's that part of it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think, some of the NASCAR guys have to do it for a little show to get the things looking good. They love to see a Tony Stewart get out and throw his helmet at somebody because they run him off the track or something. And that's good for television also.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I mean, controversy sells. We can't say that it doesn't, because it's a time-proven thing. Controversy sells.
Yeah, controversy is good to a point. I don't believe in a lot of it overdoing, but I just never. I know I was in a few crashes, and it's just one of those things. Maybe the guy in front of me made a move that I didn't expect, and I hit him and flipped or whatever. But that's just racing.
Yeah, there's only one moment I ever remember ever seeing you mad, and I know you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, speed drum.
Speed drum would do that to you, and poor Roy Crothers. He caught your wrath that night. I don't know what happened, but he caught your wrath.
Yeah, well, I was calm when I went up there and to talk to him, and he called me a dirty old man, and that tripped my trigger. So I grabbed his helmet. I was going for his seatbelt, and he grabbed his helmet, and then I said, "Don't worry, Roy, if I pull you out of here," and then he went down and held his seatbelt together. But if he'd have just said, "Well, it's one of those things that have been all over," but I have a little temper too.
Yeah, well, no, you're allowed that, sure.
Yeah, that video. I've never seen that video. That video's on YouTube, actually.
Yeah.
Poor Roy caught your wrath that night. I like Roy, though. I've known Roy since I was probably 10 or 12 years old. He's actually always been extremely nice to me. It was just one of them things, right?
Oh, yeah, that was just a one-night affair. We raced many times afterwards, and I still see him at some of the old-timers shows that he's got a sprint car. He takes around there, and I'll go down and talk to him. The good old days.
The good old days. When the last time I saw you competitively drive, that I personally saw you competitively drive, was at Chili Bowl. And you and Steve Kinzer, oddly enough, there was some sort of attrition in the heat race, and you both started on the front row together. And I was always going to track down a photo of that, and I never have. I'm sure there's one somewhere, but I really thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was something. I was hoping we'd get a picture of that too. And Steve and I talked about that, but it was great. The Chili Bowl was something I wish now we would have went and run back when I was running for Carl. We might have been able to sneak in and win that a couple times, but that's what a facility and what an event that is. Got to give them guys credit.
Yeah, I remember the very first. Now, I didn't go to the first 5, let's say. So I went, my first one, I went in 91, 92, I don't know, somewhere around there. And, it had like close to 90 cars. And I was thinking, man, 90 midgets. I can't believe how many cars there are. Look at all these, stud race car drivers from everywhere. And then a few years later,
Beauty.
is that your cat?
That's my cat, Frank. Yeah.
Hey, that happens. That happens to Scott all the time.
That happens to us all the time. Both of us happens all the time. But yeah, and I went that first one, and then a few years later, we were running it, and it was like, 100 some cars, and then all of a sudden it's 240 cars, and now they're closing on 400.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, it is, and they come from all over, the whole United States. Drivers come from Australia and buying a ride there. Why, that's amazing. Now I guess they're getting $10,000 to $15,000 for a ride. Of course, if you can go out and make 20 grand, that wouldn't be too bad. But
yeah, unfortunately, if you win, you would basically make what you rented the car for.
That's about it. I was just talking to a couple of people the other day, and they said, Yali, if I had that kind of money, I might just go buy a car and then I could run it all year. But it's guys who got money that can go do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's an unfortunate part of it. I think, unfortunately, it's just, I don't know if you call it sign of the times or what. Me personally, so DuCoin runs this weekend. And I like that. I don't know if you've been to that little track, but I really like that place.
Yeah. I think that's a neat little facility. I just can't believe that they're running the same weekend as Fort Wayne indoors. But there's
exactly
like to run dirt and pavement. And if we were running when Midget's at, I don't know where I'd go. I guess you'd have to look at the entries and see where the good guys are going. Of course, the good guys will probably split up a little bit, but I also liked going to Fort Wayne. That indoor show was really great.
Yeah, it's a really, really neat event. And anybody, of course, this will air after that show, but if anybody ever wants to go to it, they should, because, they put on, it's a little different than how it used to be. It's a different part of the facility, but it's a good track and it's pretty racy.
Well, yeah, for indoors, and the way they put the Coke syrup down to keep it good traction there. But DuCoin is another great facility for an indoor track. Those guys do an outstanding job down there. It's always nice to have some place to go in the winter and race. And of course, through my whole career, Fort Wayne's always been around. So my visitor was back. Indoors there was great. I managed to win a couple. In fact, I won the last one that they run at Fort Wayne in the old Coliseum. Now they run out in the new one, and that's really a nice facility.
Yeah, I didn't realize you won the last race there in the old facility.
Yep, I didn't realize that either till a couple of years ago when they invited me back and they told me that. So I said, something to remember.
So, you did a lot of different, you did some ARCA racing and a lot of different things. And then once your career, once you decided you weren't going to drive anymore, it seemed like you stayed in the sport in a lot of different ways. Did you do some promoting for a little bit?
No, I just helped out at the Winchester Speedway there for a while. It was kind of a little of everything, and I think the neatest thing was doing the TV for Must See Racing with Dave Argabright. that was just a lot of fun. Got to do that for a couple of years. Just being involved in the sport, of course, after you've done it all your life, is just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I know, I'm not around it as much as I used to be, and so then I look for different ways, like what we're doing here, and a couple little things where I can still be involved to a certain level. Of course, as you know, my nephew races. I don't go with him very much, but he and Bill go race, and I try to stay involved in that a little bit, and so it's different. I mean, once you're kind of away from the sport, it is weird trying to find your place in the sport.
Yeah. Well, I think like you now, your job is to go to work and make the money so they can go racing. That's what my grandson tells me, and I tell him, well, I had to work like heck to afford to go racing. So Tommy does a good job. It was neat watching the grandkids race. Tommy and my granddaughter Stephanie both used to run the front wheel drives at Winchester, and people always said, "You let them run at Winchester? That's a fast place." I said, "Well, if they don't like speed and good competition, there's no sense in going any farther."
No,
So,
that's a great point.
yeah, they both done real good at Winchester. They both won features over there, and I'm really proud of what they done.
Yeah, I like Tommy. I haven't talked to him too much, but I really like him. He's a nice guy, uh, and I enjoyed, just talking with him.
Yeah, he's a good young man. I gotta get on him once in a while to get doing a little better and work on the car more. And that's one thing we always did. And his dad done too. Even when Stephanie was running, she'd come out and work on the cars more than Tommy. And it's really helped her through the years on working on automobiles or taking care of your automobile. But we still make them come and work on the cars. If they're going to drive them and have all the fun, why, they better come
That's
and
right.
do the dirty work too.
So I typically, especially when I get a driver who a legendary driver who's raced with other legendary drivers, I like that to just throw some names out there and just get a response. I'm not looking for any dirt on them. I'm just looking for, kind of your impressions of racing with them and what it was. Um, and I mentioned this one gentleman earlier. It's somebody that I don't think he's underrated. I just think he's underappreciated, and that's Sheldon Kinzer.
Oh, Sheldon was a hard guy to get to know when he first started coming around, and but once you got to know him, golly, we went water skiing together and done a lot of different things, and have a little party afterwards where we also invited Sheldon. It just seemed like he never got the opportunities that some of the other guys done. He drove for Galen Fox, and I know when I started driving for Galen, I got in that roadster and we went to Salem to test, and I made 2 laps, and I come in and told Galen, I said, "Boy, Sheldon, I think, manhandled this thing." And he said, "Well, Sheldon never complained." And, Galen, he chewed that tobacco and was looking around. And I said, "Well, you go in the corner and you start turning, and you got to turn and turn, and then finally it turns." And he said, "Well, Sheldon never complained of that, but he said, I know the problem." We went back, fixed it up, put a new bar in the torsion arm on the steering, and went back the next day. And man, that thing was super quick. But I really like Sheldon. He was a good friend. And the year before I won the championship, when Sheldon won it, he beat me out in California. And I went over and shook his hand because we blew an engine in the heat race, so we were done. I knew if he started the feature out there, why, he was champion.
A guy I think, me personally, I feel was really, and unfortunately he got injured, and I think we really didn't get to see him at his full potential, and that's Pancho Carter.
Yeah, Pancho's wreck out there in Phoenix in the Indy car in the test was a shame. You know, he was another fierce competitor. And I was told when we go to a function somewhere, usually he was there with Steve Stapp. And I said, you know, if you two guys wouldn't have been so darn good, I could have won a lot more races. But Pancho's another good friend, you know, a good fierce competitor. But when we go to functions, we usually sit by each other, or at least stop and talk to each other.
He was, and he, again, the other, what, I mean, you raced against him, a guy I always felt was an extremely clean race car driver. Just, I felt had so much talent when I watched him run. Another guy, and this is a guy that I try to throw out there because I try to get different people's impressions of him. Jan Opperman.
Yeah, I got to meet Jan when we were running IMCA and run with him a few times there. And then when he come to USAC, why, we got to be pretty good friends also. Jan was an outstanding driver. You know, back when he was running Outlaws and that, he was really super. He won a lot of races. Maybe never got the right opportunities, but he had the right outlook on racing. You know, he wanted to win and he wanted to go run Indy, but then, you know, things just never worked out for him.
Right. And these, I'm going to throw a couple of brothers' names out, and Greg and Kenny Weld.
Yeah, you know, Greg Weld, he was kind of really running good when I got started in USAC and just getting going. Kenny, I never got to run with him a whole lot, but those were a pair of guys that had good equipment. They run hard. They worked hard at it too. And I really liked them both. You know, it's
the last. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The names you're throwing out there, just been good friends through the years. Now, maybe we weren't really good friends racing, but as it went on through the years, we have been. And
the last name I'm going to throw out is because I haven't really thrown his name out to anybody before. And a guy that, again, is a guy that you look at his career, I mean, extremely impressive career. And not a lot of people, I don't think, realize how great it was. And that's Larry Rice.
Oh, yeah. Larry was a great guy. You know, he running the midgets is where I first got to run with him there, and then in sprints and stuff. You know, Larry was an outstanding driver, kind of quiet and not really kept to himself, but, you know, he was always a friendly, good competitor. I never had any problem racing with Larry. We bumped wheels a few times, but afterwards have a little adult beverage and talk it over, and just that was it. And then I really got to know Larry much better. We used to test cars for the United States Auto Club out in California, and that was a great deal there. But and Larry there was just a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. And like I said, I didn't really know him, but always had a lot of respect for Larry Rice. Well, Aaron, that's the last driver I had. I could go on. I mean, I could literally ask you about every race car driver you've ever raced against, but we're not going to do that. Did you have any more questions for Tom?
I guess kind of going off that question you just asked, like, obviously, you know, you got to race against, you know, some of the greats of the sport. I mean, you're talking Mario Andretti, AJ Foyt, you know, the Unzers. I mean, was there ever a moment like, you know, when you're racing against one of those where, I don't know. I don't know the right word to use. I mean, not starstruck, but just like, well, I can't believe, you know, I'm racing against this person, or, you know, kind of what was, you know, that experience like getting to race against some of those guys?
I think when I run the Houston Astrodome, Foyt was there, and that was kind of a great deal. Boy, AJ Foyt's racing with us little guys, you know. It was a lot of fun racing with AJ. I got to know him. We had a crash, and he come down and he said, if you need a place to take the car and work on it, why, he gave us his card and he said, "You just tell Jack that I sent you over there." And when we walked in, Jack says, "What do you guys want?" We said, "Well, AJ sent us over to repair the car." And he said, "Oh, okay, just come on in." And they helped us get the car going so we could go back and compete. And that's the kind of a guy Foyt was. He always said, "Well, if you aren't running out there, I can't beat you." But my first champ dirt car win, it was at DuQuoin, and Foyt stopped for fuel and then had a little problem, and the car caught on fire, and I kind of waved at him as he was jumping out of his car, and I went on by to win. And he was always, he'd get mad at reporters, but with other drivers, he'd always, after the race, come and kid with you and have a good time. And the Unzers were the same way, and Mario is, all those guys, drivers get along good together. I guess you have that respect for each other. And if you're lucky enough to beat one of those guys, and I was lucky enough to beat Al Unzer, and I got to warm Bobby Unzer's sprint car up once, and Mario Andretti still, when you see him, will talk to you. Good, friendly guy, and he's a good ambassador to auto racing.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the guys, older guys are, because we made our living at it, and we're very pleased to have been able to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting that. And we actually had Mario on the show, and we were in after he was on. Aaron and I were just talking about how not only what a great ambassador he is for the sport, but just he's never really ever got out of the seat, right? He still runs that 2-seater, and it's amazing how he and this may sound odd the way I put this, but his thought process is still very relevant today. Like, I've kind of felt like Mario was the very first of what we now kind of see as a type of drivers that are in IndyCar, as far as like, just there was something about the way he raced. There was something about the way he carried himself where he was different. And he seems a little bit more like how the guys are today.
Yeah, maybe that was his style of racing, them rear engine cars and Indy cars, and then maybe because he went over and run the formula cars and all that stuff. But he always carries himself well. He has a good appearance all the time, and just an outstanding guy.
And loves auto racing. I mean, he lives and breathes it. No matter what he's done in his life. I mean, this guy's met popes and he's done it all, right? And and he loves auto racing. Loves being in a car. Loves talking about it. Loves being around it. And
it's always nice to see him during the month of May and be able to chat with him a little bit, because he loved running the Champ dirt cars where we used to run them, and they were kind of in the points with the Indy cars, and that was nice to get all them guys back then running in there. Mario was just an outstanding driver.
Yeah, definitely time proved out that he was an unbelievable driver.
Yep.
And like you were talking about with Foyt, and like we asked Mario about this, we asked him about Foyt, and like you were kind of alluding to, like Foyt could be like another guy, comes off kind of gruff, but as a race car driver, he is. He could give and take. I mean, he was as great as give and take as anybody that I've ever seen in watching the videos and really paying attention.
Yeah, AJ could get in anything. I'll never forget that night out at the fairgrounds, the mile at Indy there, when he jumped in that semi and went out and run the truck with never being in it. I think he was like almost a half a second faster than the guy that was driving it, and just goes to show that, he could jump in anything and make it go fast.
Yeah, I love that story where where Parnelli's goading him, talking about, because Parnelli obviously had Offerman in the car, and Parnelli's Golden Foyt, like, hey, there's no way you could beat Offerman. Da 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 da. And he gets that car out and he goes out to the fairgrounds, and I think he won both ends of that deal. He won. It was twin 50s, I think, right?
Yep.
And just to kind of show, hey, I can still do this.
Oh yeah, that's one thing you never want to tell Foyt. He can't do it because he'll jump in the car and go show you. Like the time he goes up to Milwaukee, had his dirt car there because they run Springfield the day before. He blew the engine. It's a rear engine car. Gets his dirt car puts the pavement tires on it, and then goes out and sets quick time.
Insane.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's yeah. But that's how legends become legends, right?
That's very true. Yeah.
I will kind of I am going to kind of ask about Sherman Armstrong a little bit. What was it like? Sherman was such another guy was kind of flamboyant and that. What was Sherman like? I know you guys had a great working relationship together, and some of your best years were with him.
Oh yeah, Sherman was a great owner. There was never anything. If you thought you needed something, he'd just tell Leffler to go get it. Let's try it, because there were times, when we'd take 4 cars out to Winchester for testing, and Greg would get in one, I'd get in the other, and we go out and run to see which car was running good. And then Sherman say, okay, now you get out of your car and you go get in Greg's, and you guys get in the other one. So we get a good idea of what's going on. But he was just a super good guy. We had a great time. Sherman probably was one of the best owners I drove for, financially, especially because I was on salary, and then I got 50% of the wins and 40% of everything else. And just, if you needed something, go ask him, and you'd have it. And a very likable guy, of course, there's always people that don't like somebody, but Sherman just was a super good guy and well liked in town.
Yeah, it was. He's kind of a guy that's kind of been lost to time a little bit, and unfortunately, and I just think it's, he was such a big force in USAC racing, especially for numerous years, and you kind of hate to see that be lost.
Yeah, owners like that are gone, where they own the Midget, Sprints, Champ Dirt cars, and golly, he had the 5 Indy cars there, 5 or 6 at Indy that one year, and a guy like that, kind of a chauvinist, I guess, but he never really acted that way to us guys. But I know people would say, oh, he thinks he's really big doing all this, but he just enjoyed doing it.
Right. Well, Tom, again, like I said earlier, you were my first racing hero. You're still one of my heroes. I'm proud to be able to say that we're friends after 52 years, because I'm 52 years old. And I know my family has always thought the world of you. And I just want to say thank you for not only being our friend, but everything you've done for the sport of auto racing. And you've definitely left the sport in a better place than you found it.
Well, thank you, Scott. And I want to thank you and Aaron for doing what you're doing here. Getting us guys, the older guys and the younger guys, even on your show, it gives them a chance to kind of show themselves and get to talk about racing. And I really enjoy talking racing. It's been my life, but I want to thank you guys for everything you do.
Yeah, thank you. And I will see you this year at the track.
Yeah, I'll be looking for
you. You will. We will see each other at the racetrack this year.
Okay, Scott. Say hi to your dad and your brother and your boy.
Do that.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay,
right,
thank you,
Tom. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Hope this comes out before Christmas.
It's going to come out after, I think, but it will still mean the same.
So Merry Christmas.
Okay. Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.